Well, welcome everyone. My name is Adam Sandler. I'm a partner with Deloitte Digital in Melbourne, and I focus on technology within the retail sector. I'm really excited to be hosting the second of four sessions that Deloitte is sponsoring covering retail and the changing landscape that we're all unfortunately or fortunately getting used to. So these series allow us to collaborate with our key alliance partners, including Meta, Google, Salesforce, and of course the ARA. So for those of you who are able to attend, yesterday was a great session hosted by my colleague, David White, where we covered 6 macro trends in retail, along with Paul Zara from the Australian Retailers Association. So today we're going to take a little bit different of a tact. We're going to talk a little bit more about technology, changes that will no doubt, and I emphasize no doubt, impact retail, with a session entitled From Social Commerce to the Metaverse. So today our goal, and hopefully we'll get through all of it, is to talk about the accelerating digitization of the physical world, how interactions with this new paradigm will really shape and change the landscape of retail, what immersive experiences will mean for you as retailers and how you can prepare yourself, which I think is a key thing. We'll get into preparedness. And of course, and always, the changing expectations and requirements that your customers have or are going to be placing on you in the near term. So with that kind of intro, look, I'm really pleased to have such a fantastic panel to share this time with. We're going to cover not only new technology, but also we'll cover the impacts that traditional areas such as retail, meaning bricks and mortar, as well as marketing, and how those will be impacted. So I'd like to introduce my panelists first. So I'll start off, and it's a little bit confusing because I've got two Kates and two Kate Bs. So first, I'm going to start off, Kate Box, with you. Kate has over 20 years marketing and advertising experience with Facebook, Microsoft Advertising in the UK, and client side for companies such as Census, McDonald's, and Tabcorp. Kate is Director, Global Business Group, Retail ANZ at Meta, and works with clients to develop future-focused strategies that will grow their business. So Kate, welcome. Really excited to have you here today.
Thanks, Adam. Fantastic to be here.
Yeah, it's great. Next is Jason Jumaros. Jason is Meta's Regional Director of Technology Industry Strategy, and he works on innovation and commercialization of Meta's family of products, apps, and services. So obviously a lot to talk about there, and we'll definitely ask Jason for perspective. He's got great experience across VR, AR, analytics, growth, and product development, and probably most importantly across multiple industries, including retail. So Jason, welcome. I really appreciate you being here today.
Hey, thanks, Adam. Looking forward to the conversation.
And it's interesting, right? Because both Kate Box and Jason will share interesting, I think, perspectives on their work in retail and really the associated gains and impacts that technology is creating. But this conversation would definitely not be complete with having a true retailer's perspective. So I'm really excited to have Kate Blythe here. Kate has a great history of working in the luxury fashion area, beauty and lifestyle. She's previously served as Chief Content Officer at Matches Fashion, and prior to that was editor at Net-a-Porter, and before that she served at LUK. Kate currently is serving as a Chief Marketing Officer for obviously a juggernaut brand like Mecca. And what I'm really interested to hear Kate talk about, and we'll probably weave this in, Kate, I imagine, is that you're also an advisor to a fashion tech startup called the Yes, which probably many of you are aware of, based in Silicon Valley. And what I'm interested, Kate, not only welcome to you, but I'm really interested to hear your perspectives on how traditional bricks and mortar and marketing are taking advantage of new technology. So Kate Blythe, welcome as well.
Thank you so much. Lovely to see you all.
Yeah, so look, I'm super excited, right, to have everyone here. And why don't we just go ahead, we'll kind of get into this. So first of all, actually, before I get started, I'd like to encourage anyone who has any questions, please pop those in the Zoom Q&A. We'll do our best to handle as many of those questions as we can with the time permitting. So we're all aware of the metaverse, right? It's out there. We're talking about it. We're also talking about all the technology and the promise of bringing 3D shopping experiences into the home. But there's an overall goal, right, that retailers like yourselves are trying to or aspire to, which is to create that richer and more interactive experience with customers. And of course, that's whether at home or in your stores. But the big question is, what does that mean for you as retailers right now? So what I'd like to first do, as we get into the Q&A here, is to start with a bit of a level setting on consumer behavior and shopping trends that have emerged. And I would rather not talk about it, but we of course have to say from the onset of COVID through what we're seeing now as we kind of head into 2022. So Kate Blythe, I will go ahead and start with you. What are you seeing from a retail and social commerce perspective?
Thanks, Adam. I think the biggest, or one of the biggest trends that emerged over COVID, and we're seeing it continue with momentum for good reason, is the trend around discovery online and in social environments in particular. And I think if we think back to 2019, a lot of discussions around the role of online was still very much cemented in the transactional space. And we were thinking of consumers as already knowing what they wanted to buy when they headed online. Whereas for good reason, over the last 2 years, we've seen the emergence of shoppertainment and little digital dopamine moments from retailers and pure plays as they help their customers discover new products and new brands. And I think they've done such a great job of elevating that experience using some of the micro trends around personalization. Retailers are understanding how to use video and in all its formats to stand out online, and they're partnering with creators. So there's some little sort of micro trends that sit under that broader movement towards discovery and that true merging of online and offline.
That's fantastic. And probably what I enjoy most is the new words that are coming out. So shoppertainment, absolutely fantastic, and seeing what's going on in the industry. So Kate Blythe, would like to ask you, what are you seeing from a traditional retailer's perspective? What's going on and how are things changing?
Yeah, so one of the things that obviously Mecca is really well known for is this very much one-to-one personal host that you get when you go into store, and you have this incredible experience and knowledge. And I think one of the things that we've seen is that, you can't just turn on a digital site and expect everyone to go there and have the same experience. So we've really sort of thought a lot about bringing that virtual host to life in a very magical way, and really having, another word, that edutainment online as well, so that you really get the understanding of why you go into store, why that knowledge is so important, what it is about that sort of store experience that you can get online. And I think the customer wants it. So we launched kind of in the thick of last year when we were in lockdown, Ask Mecca, which is where we had a virtual store host that would then guide you through the store virtually to help you with your purchase and to really take you on that kind of edutainment journey. So really, it's for us, the customer is really discerning, is not scared of digital anymore, is really happy to shop omni-channel, wants the inspiration, but also wants that extra bit. They don't want it to just be transactional. They still want that extra magic that they would find in a retail environment. So we've seen that as a really sort of strong theme. And I think that's why it's an exciting topic to unwrap with the team at Meta, and in terms of how we then really blow that up through the metaverse and through taking that experiential world a little bit further.
Yeah, it's really interesting, right? I mean, and Jason, we're going to get to you next, but it's not just a lift and shift. It's not just taking what you do in bricks and mortar and putting it online. I mean, there's elements of that, and especially for Mecca, the amazing customer experience and things like that. But it's about taking advantage of what's available now. So Jason, I think we've heard Metaverse probably maybe 2 or 3 times so far in, I think, the first 8 or 9 minutes. So wanted to turn it over to you a little bit to discuss the technology and more specifically the Metaverse, right? And it's pushing and it's changing and it's evolving retail and the retail experience. I know I'm just going to give you a few minutes, but could you briefly touch on the Metaverse, what it is, and what role you seeing it play kind of not only now, but as retail evolves?
Yeah, great question. I mean, this is not at all obvious right now, but I think you've got to ground the way that you look at this in the last 50 years of computing technology. And what we've seen over that period of time is that, media, communications, whatever you want to characterize it as, has been limited to this kind of 2-dimensional flat world. Sometimes we call this flatland. And the consequence of that, cathode ray tubes and OLEDs and LCD screens, and you kind of peer at the internet through this little window, the consequence is that digital and the internet is something today that we look at. It's not something that we're in or that we experience viscerally and deeply. But where we're moving is to this world the metaverse of tomorrow, where the internet's going to be more like a thing that we inhabit. It's going to be a set of digital spaces that include, immersive 3D experiences, and these are all interconnected, so you can easily move between them. And this will obviously let you do things in the physical world that you wouldn't necessarily be able to do, kind of in the world as it is today. And then, how does this all work? I guess some of those technologies are around, but the metaverse is not VR, and it's not any of the singular technologies that are here today. So you kind of got to look at what we've got today and then squint a little bit to be able to see it. And this is a 5 to 10 year journey, but we have obviously virtual reality technologies today. We have augmented reality technologies today, and some of those are moving beyond that early adopter phase quite quickly. So the Oculus app, for example, was #1 in the iTunes store over Christmas in about 14 different countries. But to realize this full vision, there's a lot more that needs to be done. You basically need to fit a supercomputer into a pair of normal looking glasses that are something like this. That's displays, projectors, batteries, radios, custom silicon. And then I think when you do that, you start to get to this dichotomy that Kate Blythe hinted about first, which is, today we have this sort of digital world, and then we have what we call the real world. And I think we're going to get to a point where the digital overlays that you have on the physical world are just as real and just as integrated into our everyday experiences as anything else is today. So super exciting. I hope that gives you a little bit of an answer around sort of what do we think it is, and where is it going, and what technologies are in play in the first instance.
Yeah, look, I think that's great. Obviously, like you just said, digital, physical, blurring, metaverse. I think people are going to get more and more comfortable with it, as you said. I'm really interested, and we'll explore a little bit later, around preparedness. And when you start thinking about things like how retailers did or did not take advantage of online, this is kind of an opportunity or a decision point for a lot of retailers. So it'll be interesting. But we've now talked a little bit about trends and behaviors, right, that we're seeing in 2022. Kate Blythe, what I was hoping to do is maybe turn my attention back to you. We talked last week when we caught up just about bringing the business on for a journey, right? Bringing them along. And it's not as easy as said. So whether it's digital transformation or it's leveraging technology, bricks and mortar, online, all of these different words and how we bring it together. So I'm really interested to get your perspective on how do you see marketing take advantage of the digital transformations that are going on, technology such as the metaverse, with an overall goal, right, to leverage the technology to enhance the overall experience for customers, but also there's a great opportunity to enhance the brand. And so how do you see not only organizations, but also Mecca taking advantage of what's kind of coming forward to enhance that brand and communications?
So there's a lot of questions there, actually, Adam. So I'd say the first thing, as a business, and Mecca's 25 years old this year, and it has very much been a bricks and mortar business that has really scaled with this very exceptional customer experience. The kind of digital transformation journey we've been on the last 2 years has been exponential, and it has been the big focus of the business. And I think the one thing we would say is that has made a lot of people in the business think, whoa, hold on a minute, like, why are we just focusing on that when we've got this, we have this huge store network that's growing, we're investing, we're multiplying our stores, we're opening flagships left, right, and center. And I think one of the things that we're really aware of is that actually it's all this omni-channel experience, and we want our teams and we want our customers to understand that actually every single touch point is as important as the next. So our digital store is our digital store, it's part of our network. And actually when we open a virtual store within the metaverse, that will be part of our network. As much as it feels alien to some people, I think just really putting the time in to explain the journey of why is something that we've really invested in. So whether that's with lunch and learn sessions, whether we've got the CTO there talking about why we're doing things and how, but also how it then connects the rest of the network. Because digital transformation isn't just about the customer experience online, it's really about building all that tech infrastructure through your customer services, through your supply chain. And actually when you look at that all together and how that connects, I think we've taken everybody on that journey, but it was definitely a real consideration. So it didn't split the business into two, old world, new world. And then how are we kind of enhancing the brand and taking advantage of all the new cool stuff that's coming down the pipe? I think Mecca has always been super innovative. You know, that vision and that innovation has always been one of our main pillars. And the key driver, the one thing we've never wanted to do is sit still and sit back and say, hey, we've got this. I think we're always looking to the next. We are very much a gazelle business in that way. And with that, it means that, you know, is the metaverse, or the Meccaverse, as we like to call it, something we should be scared of, or should we be embracing it? We absolutely should be embracing it, because it's just the natural next step for not just the store teams, for the, you know, the rest of the staff of the business, but for the customers. So actually, if we want our customers to engage with us however they want to, we'll still have an amazing bricks and mortar experience, but we'll also have, you know, our virtual avatar, who is Miss Mecca, hosting in a virtual store with Francois Nars talking about the new product launch. And that, to me, is just the natural next step for marketing. So, you know, is the chief marketing officer going to become the chief metaverse officer? In some way, there's elements of that for sure. And I think being excited about all of the opportunities and sort of embracing that is, I mean, 50% there. Because actually what's so great at the moment as a business is, and I'm sure many other businesses are the same, is that especially through the pandemic, the community and the, you know, really harnessing of the community has been so important to our how we build the business, but how we communicate to the business and how we communicate with our, you know, customers as well. And so the idea of using that community as creators to really involve them in this kind of growth and journey, I think, is something that we are really super passionate about.
Yeah, that's fantastic. It's actually interesting, and a question that just popped into my head is, are you seeing the debate between online and digital? Bricks and mortar and digital, is that going away? Because there was always such a debate, right? Which was going to outlast the other, and you've now spoken a lot about merging the two and getting benefit out of both of them. Has that died down a bit in your mind?
I think for sure, for us as a business, we are opening new resort stores, which are completely new concepts. We're opening a new flagship in Melbourne, which is going to be 3 times the size of our Sydney flagship. We are going through a huge digital transformation at the moment. We've obviously launched the app. We just launched the New Zealand app last week. We are heavily investing into digital, and we're putting our toe in the water into all things metaverse. And so for us, it's not one or the other. It is an omni-channel experience. And so, you know, that getting the human touch of the physical environment into digital and taking the digital sort of speed and knowledge and all of those incredible elements into a physical space is where we want to evolve to. So, you know, that flagship in Melbourne should be absolutely fully 360. You should have incredible digital experience in there. We should be partnering with Meta and putting some great new technology in there. We should be thinking about how we actually take what happens within that store environment and blow it across all of our digital channels and all of our partner platforms. So we really don't think about it as, you know, church and state. I think for us, it's very much this, you know, fully 360 omni-channel experience that if a customer wants to just open an email and shop that way, let them have the best experience of that. But if they also want to then have a totally different experience in store or online or through the app or via Instagram, then we will provide them with all of those amazing touch points. So for us, it's about making sure that that whole sort of ecosystem is really buttoned up and makes sense and talks to each other.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I guess it's the seamless nature, right? We always have talked about the ability to do not just one, but all, and make it seamless is obviously a challenge for brands, but also a huge differentiator and a huge opportunity. So Kate Blythe, I'm going to stick with you just for a second, if you don't mind, and then I'll give you a break. But when we caught up last week, we had a great discussion around Mecca's focus around telling the individual brand stories, right? And amplifying those communications. And then there's a relationship not only between Mecca and the brands, but between the brands and your customers. And I was just wondering, maybe just to continue that line of thought, how do you see the technologies, including the metaverse, help you to influence those communications and amplify your brand?
I think it's a really great topic. You know, we have 200 of the biggest beauty brands in the world, and we want to tell all of those stories to our customers and our community. And it's a challenge when you're limited in terms of store windows or homepage. So actually, I think the ever-growing opportunities around how you communicate means that we can have multiple conversations with our customers at different times. And, you know, we talked about personalization, but we really, if we think about having that, you know, Francois Nars in a virtual environment as an avatar, having a conversation with Joe Horgan in our virtual store, I mean, that's just one amazing way of bringing a brand story to life. And, you know, I think we want to do way more video. We want to have a bigger presence across all of our social platforms as well, and really start blowing out those stories, because I think that sort of knowledge and understanding connects deeply with the customers, and that's something that we've always done and we always will do. And pre-COVID, you know, we would have all of the brands come to Australia to visit, and they would go to literally every single store. They would do customer sessions, they would do team session training, and obviously times have changed, but how can we still do that, but in a virtual world as well? So actually JGR and I've talked multiple times about how you can actually take education platforms into the metaverse, and could you have then, you know, all of your teams are maybe all over the world, but they could be sitting in a virtual room being hosted by the brand founder talking about that product. So they then have the knowledge to go out there to customers. So there's multiple ways in which we're thinking about really telling those brand stories and kind of communicating. So it opens up huge opportunities for us. And I think when you really care deeply about telling the story and the storytelling, I think for us, that is something that, you know, we don't want to be a transactional business. We want it to be really meaningful. So this gives us more opportunity to do that in multiple ways.
Yeah. You know, what I love about that also is that it's almost a create your own journey from the customer's perspective as well. So,
yeah,
you know, these capabilities allow the customer, I mean, we always talk about personalization, and that's obviously not only a buzzword, but it's something we need to do from a marketing perspective, especially in retail. But I love the idea with so much, what this opens is the ability of the customer to explore your brand, and the customer to explore what you're offering at their own pace and in their own way. So I think, you know, it's not only beneficial for the retail, but it's also super beneficial from a customer's perspective. So what I'd like to maybe move back is to Kate Blythe and Jason. You know, we've obviously heard and the Mecca brand so strong, what they're doing from a digital perspective, but also what they do from an in-store experience and that client relationship. What do you see as other opportunities in addition to what Kate just spoke about for retailers or the retail industry with these new technologies opening up? So maybe Kate Blythe, I'll go to you first, and then Jason, over to you.
I've just loved listening to Kate speak, and it's occurred to me that I think we need a new word for omnichannel. When we talk about omni-channel strategy, and I have heard one emerging in the United States around hybrid strategy, but it is just that complete merging. And I think there are opportunities, and I'll get to them, but I think what's so key to it is I've even heard discussions in the last couple of months around how, you know, online has gone back to, you know, pre-COVID levels for particular business, or it's the market's gone back to 12% of sales down from 15. And it still means that the discussions are so entrenched in transactional only opportunities in online. If we don't see the transactions, we believe that the opportunity is completely shifted to in-store. And I think that's sort of the fundamental shift we need to see in thinking about what is the opportunity for online to drive sales anywhere. And I love how Mecca leads in this. But I think, I mean, the obvious one is trying things on and trying things out in the home. We've seen that shift to people loving to shop, you know, 10 times a week for 5 minutes rather than carve out 2 hours to go to the mall. So if they're having these little discovery moments, one of the opportunities will be that one that's already out there being tested with augmented reality ads to try on or try out products in the home. And we know that there's high demand for those experiences to get better. The other exciting area, I think, is catalogs. I mean, it sounds so basic, but if you think about the journey from an A4 sort of piece of paper catalogue to, as Jason was saying before, shifting that into a two-dimensional screen, Imagine if you can stumble across a catalog and then tap it and it becomes, you know, in front of you, a three-dimensional experience that you can flick through, that you can pull products out of, that you can tap to learn more about. So I think that's a really exciting space. And then just scaling things like product launches or season launches or DIY experiences, where you can have so many more people there than you might have in an in-store environment in the future. And I think that whole area too that Kate spoke about so well around recommendations and advice, whether that's you know, while you're in store and if you can't get help straight away, being able to easily tap into information on, you know, the provenance or sustainability credentials of a product that you're going to buy. Or maybe you've just done your grocery shop, you've come home, and then you can have a chef, an augmented reality chef, join you in the kitchen to help you cook tonight's dinner. You know, I think what's exciting to me is that the retail industry has been experts in great customer experience for decades. Now it's about imagining it in this new and different format. So lots to think about.
Yeah, absolutely. Jason, perspective there for other retailers across what, you know, your purview globally?
Yeah, this is a really good question, but to an extent, it's like us sitting here in 1998 trying to talk about what the web's going to be used for. So, you know, I guess the short answer is hundreds of millions of different things and a lot of stuff that we can't imagine. So one way of looking at this is to say, you know, what are people doing right now, today, and then we kind of iterate from there, because this is going to take a lot of people and a lot of partners and a lot of collaboration across the industry and different equity groups. So let me give you a couple of examples of what people are doing today. You know, if you are, I guess, from a consumer perspective. So if you're a student and you're looking to do, you know, like a technical qualification or a training course, then, you know, TAFE New South Wales right now is building courses in virtual reality. If you're into fashion and beauty, Kate, you will both have much more insight into this than I do, and we've heard about some of that. But, you know, Denny Francisco, who's a Wiradjuri fashion designer, just created a show in virtual reality that some of you have all seen. If you're a music fan, the Foo Fighters just performed an exclusive concert in VR after the Super Bowl. If you want to learn about kind of a fragile ecosystem, then there's a company in Melbourne called Foria that just built a series of experiences in VR and AR. If you want to exercise, Les Mills from New Zealand just launched Body Combat in Quest. And so there's going to be, you know, the interesting thing about this is just the sheer variety of things that you can do and experiences. And so for me, part of the answer to this is, you know, look about the range of things that people are doing, not just within the retail category, and then we can start to maybe join the dots and use those as inspiration.
Yeah, you mentioned a lot of what's going on now. Do you see any consumer trends that are kind of on the cusp of emerging as a result of the metaverse, or I guess maybe as it gains in popularity? Is there anything that, like if you will, a sneak peek that you could give us?
I think, yeah, the one big trend, which I'm in danger of repeating myself here, but this used to be about gaming.
Okay.
It is clearly not about gaming. So all of these different use cases have evolved over the last 5 years, from, you know, education to social experiences to, you know, people are working out in these environments now. So I think that we should see that broadening out a lot. I think one of the sort of fundamental centers of gravity as a concept that you've got to bear in mind when you think about this is this notion of presence. So if, you know, presence is kind of, you feel like you're really there, or you're really there with another person or in another environment. And so you have this much deeper sense of interaction. And I think if you kind of take that fundamental concept to heart in your design, that's probably a good place to start thinking about, okay, how are then people going to interact with my brand or my offerings when they have this deeper sense of presence, and how can what I build be additive to what I have today rather than just kind of replicate it?
Yeah, and I assume, like everything, I mean, as technology continues to evolve and access to the technology to consume things like the metaverse, presence will become more seamless. It'll become more lifelike and more real. I know some early forays into it seem artificial. And I mean, you go back years ago and you were almost trying to find what a solution for a problem that maybe didn't exist. But obviously, as the technology evolves and I think more people get more comfortable with it, obviously there's no limit to it. Are you seeing anything? And it just dawned on me, are you seeing ages? I mean, obviously the younger individuals, teens, 20s are growing up with this, but are you seeing people, in older generations, and I'm going to stop there and not call on anyone or anything, but, are you seeing the adoption going well there as well?
Yeah, we've seen some really interesting use cases in all areas of the population. And we can maybe post a link to some of these. There was a documentary recently that was created where seniors got into virtual reality and they use this kind of a memory device to recall some of the things that they were doing in their youth, like going on safari to Africa, and then use this as a sort of storytelling interaction mechanic to then to work with younger kids and explain that. And that was there are dozens of these experiments that sort of suggest that there are really great use cases, and they can do things like connect people across generations, because just the power of storytelling in that environment. So I think this is a little bit like mobile in some ways. Is that it started off being for the younger generation, and then it just expanded really, really quickly. And in a world where we're all walking around with a pair of smart glasses on, that's giving you this kind of heads-up display onto the environment that you walk into, a retail environment, it's giving you enhanced senses and interactions. Everybody's going to want some of that. That's not something that's going to be restricted to a younger age group.
Yeah. So my key takeaway for retailers specifically is you can't just say it's for the young kids. It's obviously being taken up by everyone. So look, we've covered, I think, existing and emerging trends and what these mean for retailers, and touched upon some things that maybe haven't yet come. I'd love to shift gears for a couple minutes and talk about getting prepared. And so Kate Blythe, I'm going to ask you, we had so many experiences, and there's so many, whether it's Blockbuster or Kodak, organizations that didn't fully interpret what was going on, didn't plan enough in the future. And a lot of people and a lot of big brands just seemingly underinvested in technology, right? Underinvested in online, thought maybe it was a passing phase. Do you see a challenge right now getting what I would call traditional retailers, a lot of people who are focused as merchants, right? Trade driving. Are you seeing a challenge in getting spend in this area? It's a new spend area, and it's not cheap, obviously.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I would think of it, I think where we are is going from a sort of innovation to transformation stage. And I think if you think of it in that way, it's less like, oh, they're innovative, they'll go off and try this, but actually we're all going through a transformation and we all have to be ahead of that curve. I think if you're not, it's really risky. So I think we have invested heavily in digital. We had a lot of catch up to do. But I think the other thing everybody needs to understand when you're on that kind of digital transformation journey, is that is a continual evolution. So what we've got today, and when we go live with our new website later in the year, that will only be good for a certain amount of time, and then you have to reinvest to really take it to the next level. And I think that's the bit that sort of merchants, or from a bricks and mortar trading environment, would be like, well, you've built the store, why do you need to rebuild the store? And I think, for me, I've worked in this world for 20 years, and I've been through something like 6 or 7 replatforms. And when you've done that and you think you've just built an incredible, awesome product, and then you actually start entirely from scratch and build every single piece of technology over again, I think that's part of that evolution, and it comes in sort of waves. So I think you have to be ready for that. And I think you have to plan for the next stage, and you have to, if you can, as we build out our new sort of platform, we need to be thinking about what else do we need to build in there, even if we don't want to go live with it right now. So how can we make sure that we're, if we're going to be bolting on, added elements, how does that seamlessly integrate with everything else that we've got? How do we connect it into all of our back end? How do we connect it into all of our clienteling? And one of the things that we're doing actually is, looking at our loyalty program and how we take that from being a really great loyalty program. Lots of people love our loyalty program, but how do we make it right for the sort of future? And how do we really integrate all of those elements that we're talking about into that world so that it actually becomes a place for community and conversation and sharing? And I think there's, if you always think that what you've got works, then that I think will limit you. You've always got to think, yeah, it's fine for today, but what is it? What do we need it to be in 5 years? And I think that's part of that digital transformation journey. And really, we're all digital citizens now. Everybody should be really upskilling their teams on digital, their education in terms of why it's important, but also how much you invest as a business into it. And that's only going to get more. We're on a revolution. So really, how do we really start getting everybody on that? And it doesn't mean that you take away from the core business. The core business still is incredibly important, but you really need to kind of connect all of that all the way through. And I think that's, for me, super exciting. And I think for other people, it's like, but why or how? And I think it's just education. And I think when you say, well, if we do this, it's going to unlock all these opportunities. You could go into a store as a customer, they'll have all of your data in there, they'll have all of your details that you can, you won't have to ask for what the shade was they'll have all that information because you've digitalized the experience. So there's small things you do, but as I say, it's a continual investment and it's a continual evolution. And the more people sort of all businesses and brands move away from it being all about innovation to transformation, I think that really helps you think about how your business needs to transform going forward.
Yeah. It's so words that we're all used to, future-proof. That's obviously a buzzword, but it sounds like, and for obvious reasons, it's not for the faint of heart, right? So it's going to be something that, obviously it's not just a project, it's a program. It's a journey that everyone's going to have to go on. Is there anything in particular, do you find within Mecca, and then I'll move kind of away from Mecca for a second, but is there anything that you're seeing in Mecca that you're specifically doing to prepare? Do you have specific meetings? Do you have specific titles? Are there things that you're doing to get ready, not just for Metaverse, but the new technologies to create that more engaging experience?
I mean, there's so much. We, in terms of who we hire, why we're hiring them, where we're prioritizing, how much we're investing. The sort of teams from 2 years ago were entirely different. The fact that we have squads and the fact we have this totally different language that everyone else, in sort of old world Mecca would never have experienced before or understand what they are. If we think about how we even report on trade, to Kate's point earlier about how you really monetize the social channels and these digital experiences as well. We're not just reporting on the online trade versus the store trade. We're reporting on social trade. We're reporting on all of the engagement metrics as well. So actually we're filtering in different ways of kind of showing the business how things are performing and how the customer is engaging with us. So, we want the footfall, but you also want the impressions, and you also want that kind of stickiness across all of your platforms. But yeah, we have multiple digital meetings, and so I'd say 50% of the business are very digitally native, 50% aren't. So we're really trying to train up the 50% that aren't. But also when we're bringing in digital natives into a business that was built on a classic retail bricks and mortar model, we need to make sure those digital natives understand the language from the previous world too, so that everybody can have a sort of consistency, which has been super interesting. Yes, but we have Metaverse meetings, we have NFT meetings, we have I spent about 3 hours this week on this particular virtual store that we want to build, and I think it's the people in there would never have experienced it before, and now they're like, wow, this is so interesting. Whereas I feel like if you've worked in a very digitally native environment, and I have for a very long time, we did all this conversations before, but in basic ways. So it's not unusual for me. So I think getting everybody on the same page of what all of those, and we were actually talking about having a little guidebook into what we're all talking about, because sometimes we do sound a bit sort of alien.
Yeah, there are a couple of things that you said that are really interesting. I think that first of all, the notion of educating. So it's not just about forward. You've got to go back. You are a retailer, and so people need to understand that. The other thing that I find really interesting, I read an article recently about reporting, as you just said, and it's organizations that are reporting not in comparison or competition, more homogenous, more, I guess, Kate Box, to use your word, omni-channel, or a new word for that. Reporting really needs to look at in totality how the organization is doing.
Yeah.
Because if you segregate or segment and you just say online versus bricks and mortar or foot traffic versus impressions, you can almost get, in many cases, also an adversarial relationship within the organization where you're actually trying to make it more homogeneous, more integrated, more seamless. So I thought those were really good points. Jason and Kate Box, I guess, a similar question, though, maybe just broadening out. And I know Kate Blythe has the connections back into Silicon Valley and what's going on. I'm interested from your purview, locally and globally, what are retailers doing? Do you see things that retailers are doing right now to really prepare themselves for kind of this next wave of retail?
Yeah, I can touch on that first. I mean, Kate said it so well, but that area around education has been really key, and starting with the consumer behaviors that we're seeing now, and making sure we understand, the demand for things like augmented reality experiences, VR. I know it is just under 50% of people who say they would like to shop in a VR environment, which leaves over 50% who don't want to. But I'll use Jason's analogy a bit from earlier, that it is like sitting next to someone with a Nokia in 1998 and saying, do you want to shop with your phone? And a lot of people wouldn't have the ability to picture how good an experience that could be. So definitely seeing a lot of focus on education and a lot of thinking about terminology and how structurally the businesses get set up to think about this correctly, which I think is interesting. On a slightly more practical note, there's just a lot of testing around these shoppertainment, if you like, capabilities in a two-dimensional world, because there's an understanding that if you don't know how to do some of these things in a two-dimensional world, it's not going to become any easier in a three-dimensional world. So some examples of that are testing things like augmented reality and augmented reality ads, which are expected to grow to about a $6 billion market by 2025, setting up a shop on platforms like Instagram and Facebook and others, and understanding how they work, what is incremental to your business from being in these environments versus your own website. Really getting to understand how customers are interacting with those environments. And then we're seeing in Southeast Asia in particular, and now in the United States, a lot of testing around live shopping experiences as well, and understanding that you can bring the social element of a shopping experience into a two-dimensional environment. That will be a deeper, richer, more present experience in the metaverse. But if you haven't got the ideas around who you want to be when you turn up to a live shopping experience, or what sort of categories is this about, who's the audience that wants to be here, you can start learning about those things right now. And on a really practical basis, we're just seeing a lot of businesses make sure they've got some of the pipes, the sort of digital infrastructure set up that will mean they can plug in to these new environments when they become available, like understanding cross-channel measurement and conversion uplift, having the right product feeds, just getting some of those foundations laid to move into these environments well.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. Jason, any comments there as well? What you're seeing from organizations getting prepared, getting ready, kind of at the starting line?
I'd echo all of that 100%. You got to kind of learn to crawl before you can run, and so you need to build that muscle within organizations. I think maybe the other thing that is a little bit additive is product. So we've talked a lot about retail, but I think we also need to consider that there are going to be the products that you have now, and then there are going to be a whole line of metaverse products, right, that you're going to want to sell in a virtual world as well. So, simplistically, you're going to want to own your own avatar and the clothing that you buy for it and how it looks and the stuff that you might produce or make. If you're a creator, you want to be able to be correctly attributed for the art or experiences or worlds or looks that you build. And obviously, I think Kate touched on NFTs. It's possible that some of that technology might play a role in this, but the important concept here is interoperability. And which is, you want to be able to take your stuff wherever it is that you go within the metaverse. And that's not the case in digital environments today. So you can't wear a Minecraft skin in Roblox. And so, my daughter will go to a Billie Eilish concert in the metaverse. She wants to be able to wear the swag outside just like she would out at the stadium. So you kind of, there'll be a bunch of virtual products. And this concept of interoperability is something that's really important for those virtual products to be able to work. And so you start to see the early stages of some of that happening now in the work that different brands and retailers are doing as well.
Yeah, what I'm finding so interesting about this conversation, I mean, you look at a brand like Mecca, sorry, I got those confused all of a sudden. But, so many big powerhouses, you look at Nike, and so many are either dipping their toe or really, starting to take off with it. But what I found really interesting in some of the reading that I've been doing is that it's not just about the retail or the merchant. There's so many different things involved in this, right? From a patent, filing patents to make sure that your product is protected online. So the legal ramifications, and also just making sure that the environments are safe. So it's not just a merchant. It's not just about a transaction. It's really about that, that full experience, and making sure that you're, back to Kate Blythe, that that your brand is protected. So you want to make sure you amplify the brand, but you also want to make sure that your brand isn't degraded or is made whole and is actually a positive. So one thing, and I've got a few more questions before we get into some of the questions that have come in. I'm really interested, and Kate Blythe, it probably most relevant to you. Who owns the strategy within the organization, within the retail organization, to push towards such things like the metaverse and these new technologies? I mean, is it IT? Is it digital? Is it marketing? Is it a village together? How does that work?
Well, great question. I would say that I'm very lucky to have an awesome CTO and an awesome chief digital officer as well. And the three of us absolutely are, sort of all in it together. So as we're doing digital transformation, the three of us are leading that. So from all angles, we work very, very super collaboratively together. In terms of new things that we're doing, we've just launched an AR filter with our new sort of campaign. That is a totally marketing-led project. So when it's things like that we don't need to integrate, then we will just get on and do it. When we're sort of looking at, we turned 25 this year, so we're going to have a big kind of Mecca 25, and that's where we'd like to launch some NFTs at that point. That we're leading from a marketing perspective, but the CTO and the CDO are very much on board and sort of working alongside us with it, especially when we get into integration. As we're looking at the virtual store, I've got a partner from tech, one of the architects, and I've got, and it's my team and somebody from product. And so we will push from a marketing perspective, and then once it gets to sort of integration, that's where these guys really come into play. So it's super collaborative, and I think that's what's exciting. And as I say, when you're dipping your toe and doing little things, and then the big things, obviously when we can test and try from a marketing perspective, let's just get on and do it. Everyone's building, the full platform, so they can focus on that. We can try a few things over here. But as I say, I've got really digitally savvy people on my team, and they work very collaboratively across the departments. And I think that's absolutely how it should be. And so who owns the strategy at the moment on Metaverse? It's probably me. But as I say, it's me with my peers sort of standing by the side, we're all in it together. I'm probably more vocally excited about some of these things. And whereas because I see those opportunities and everyone else is, excited, but happy for me to get on with it. So it depends. I think your chief digital officer and your chief marketing officer will tend to be the people we'd be thinking, what is the customer experience here? How can we get the customers super engaged? How is this going to build loyalty, and how is this going to sort of propel the brand? So I think the two of you together with the CTO as well, I think is, you know, a good way to go about it.
Well, you led perfectly into my next question, which anyone, all three of you could probably cover on. But you talked about skills, you talked about teaming. Now, you know, I think a really timely question, fortunately or unfortunately, with what's been going on, especially here in Australia, is, you know, we're driving more immersive, engaging customer experiences. But how will organizations get access to the right skills? You know, we're already in a skills constrained market. Now, hopefully February 21st, I think borders opened and we're starting to see slow influx of people. But I guess, is there a perspective on, you know, what types of skills, but is that going to be an inhibitor to organizations to kind of push into this technology, and specifically the metaverse?
I would jump in with one thought there from some discussions I've had around obviously the new age of remote work and hybrid work, and tapping into people regardless of where they're sitting is something that I know some retailers are thinking about. And also trying to find that right balance between having their own teams built up and thinking about what are the key partnerships that I'll want to have in the next 5 or 10 years in relation to these sorts of opportunities. So I'd say they're the two sorts of insights I've come across. And just one about internal, I'd love that the chief marketing officer role, it can be elevated with the future that we're looking at here, because it's got consumers and customers at its core. And I think in retail, there are retailers who don't have a CMO. And I think this is such a great opportunity to think about how to elevate that role and put it at the center of this in partnership with the digital officers or technology officers. So I'm just adding that there as a thought.
I love that, Kate, because actually the chief marketing officer comes across as being, it's quite an old school sort of, you think, well, it's very, you've got your sort of, this is your grid of all the things that you go after in a marketing perspective. It's totally not that. And, you really have to be digitally native. You really absolutely have to be innovative and thinking way beyond the traditional means. Yes, you've got to be driving trade, but you've got to be thinking about brand noise, brand buzz, and how to build the brand. So it's sort of, I think the role itself is completely evolving. And it's definitely not what it was 10 years ago. And it's probably not even what it was 5 years ago. So no, I think you're right. It's all these old school job titles, I don't think really make sense.
Yeah,
it's a webinar of its own. The chief marketing
chief magic officer.
Jason, any thoughts with before we move into some additional questions from the attendees, just around skill storage? Kate Blythe, I really like what you said, and the global ways of working now, as much as Australia has been closed and we're just starting to see an opening of borders, people can work from wherever, whenever, and I think technology especially, it probably lends itself. But Jason, any thoughts on skill shortages?
Yeah, I mean, no question that skills in 3D design or good 3D designers are rare as hen's teeth right now. And so this is going to be a bottleneck for sure. So education is really, really important here, and we've got programs trying to drive education, and both in terms of training people and having educational organizations build and contribute to this to build more training courses and to scale that. But also, I think it's organizations like us, you should expect us to be producing tools that are going to make this easier. So one of the things that we've talked about a little bit in the past, and you should see soon, is something that we codenamed Polar, but it's like a mobile phone version of what we used to call Spark AR, Meta AR, which is our AR creation toolkit. So like anybody can do that. I've been testing it with my kids over the holidays to kind of get them to build their own AR filters, and it really is an easy drag and drop interface. If you saw, I don't know whether you saw last week, and we can post a link, we did an in the lab session where we previewed some of the assistant-based design technologies that we have. So like you get into a 3D environment, like design environment within worlds, and you say, hey, make me an island and put some trees on it and put a picnic blanket down there, and it just starts to pop up in the environment. So, not that that's going to be a final design, but you can use those technologies to prototype, figure out what works, and then you can move forwards into a final design. So, we're going to need to think of innovative ways to get around the skills shortages, but there's no question that they're there.
Yeah, and look, I know a lot of the questions that are coming in now from retailers, that are on here. Everyone's been impacted by the skill shortage, and so it's no doubt it's something top of mind. Kate, Kate Blythe, there was a question that came in talking about the idea of the community and creators and people not only contributing to what you're doing, but consuming what you're doing. How do you go about collaborating with that community, while maintaining the essence of your Mecca brand and the quality of it?
I think for us, our community is so engaged. They are a force to be reckoned with. So we launched about 2 years ago now, 2.5 years ago, a little sort of group on Facebook, Mecca Chit Chat group, for our community to just meet and chat, and it is blown up. And actually, they are like the sort of source of everything, and we then engage with them for all of our insights. We have this kind of Mecca Makers program where we engage with them to kind of ask them about new brands that we're thinking about stocking. Should we stock them? What do we think about celebrity brands? What do we think about the metaverse? Like, actually, we will engage with them on topics of conversation, strategic kind of pillars that we're looking at. They are a very, very sort of incredible community. And what happens as well is that once they start talking about a topic, it builds and it builds and it builds. So, I mean, I would say that for us, community is it's exceptionally important, and creators as well. We've always been a very collaboratively creative business. So every year we partner with the NGB on an artist program. So we work with an artist to do all of our holiday packaging, but we're doing a lot more with the NGB and a lot more with the creatives now. And so, if we're going to partner with them, let's give them a platform as well. So we'll not just use their art, but we'll actually tell their stories. We'll actually bring them into the business. We'll actually have them as part of that kind of Mecca family, and give them a voice that they probably never had before. So I think it's a really collaborative partnerships. It's not just that we're going to work with them on X. We sort of build it out much further than that. And so the creators on things like that, but also we'll go as far as getting our community to really give advice on the products they want to see that we don't have, the actual specific formulations that are interesting to them, so they can help co-create. So when we've got our signature line brand, which is our private label, we can really take those insights and kind of build it into the brands, the products, the actual specifics that they feel we're lacking or that they want. So it gives them a sort of, they feel that they're part of the business. And I think that is so powerful, because we really engage with them as well. We want to hear their insights. We want to invite them to things. We want them there as, sort of our best customers as well, but also to attend all those moments and events that we have. So it's really becomes this huge thing. And it's just the creators going forward, especially in the kind of Meccaverse world. It's all about the creators. It's all about those incredible small teams that are producing awesome, AR filters, and we want all of that in the business. So we will partner with them directly. And how we engage with them also, of course, in terms of if we're working with TikTok, if we're working with Instagram, or we're creating reels, we will partner with them all the time, daily, 3 times a day on different platforms as well. So we give them a voice as sort of representatives of Mecca.
You talk about building loyalty, right? You talked about the loyalty platform and loyalty capabilities. There's nothing better to get loyalty than have people co-creating and designing with you and really representing your brand. So look, we are right at time. I can't thank you enough for our participants. I've really enjoyed the conversation. Obviously very free-flowing, and obviously your insights just absolutely tremendous, not only on technology, but also on retail and the disruption, both positive and slightly apprehensive that people could be feeling right now. But as I said to you at the beginning, so thank you very much, the three of you. I can't thank you enough for it. We're really proud as Deloitte to be hosting this 4-part series. So this was part 2. Tomorrow you'll hear from our alliance partner, Google, on how to maximize digital engagement in a COVID normal world. And so if you haven't registered for that, a little plug there, you can simply Google retail right now or check out the Deloitte website. The session will run tomorrow from 2 to 3 p.m. So Kate and Jason, thank you so much.
Kate.
Really appreciate your time. And for everyone who attended, thank you so much. It's been absolutely fantastic. Have a great day. And really, thanks for attending.
Thank you.